Good evening and welcome, KMXT listeners and audience members, to the candidate forum for the Kodiak Island Borough. My name is Neil Basewas. I retired out of the Coast Guard, and that's what got me here to Kodiak.
And my name is Brian Benoit. I'm the senior reporter at KMXT, and I've been here for about 3 years. Looking forward to getting to know you all.
As we begin tonight's candidate forum, we would like to acknowledge that this event is being put together by KMXT, KVOK, and the Kodiak Chamber of Commerce.
Tonight's questions have been crafted by KMXT's news team in collaboration with the Kodiak Chamber of Commerce and KVOK. For transparency, some of the candidates running for election this year are KMXT Public Radio staff. However, to maintain the fairness, impartiality, and integrity of this annual forum, none of the questions have been shared with any of the candidates ahead of tonight, which has been our standard for previous years as well.
Each candidate will have up to 1 minute for opening statements to include them to introduce themselves. Forgive me. Once we begin questioning, each candidate will have up to 2 minutes to answer. We will rotate who answers a question first. The forum will end each candidate's 1 minute closing statements.
We'll be using the timer in the Kodiak Island Borough's Assembly Chamber, right up there. And the time starts when you begin speaking. If the timer goes off during your statement or answer, please wrap up your comments immediately. Starting with opening statements, we're going to go in alphabetical order by last name, starting with Jeremiah Gardner. Your 1 minute opening statement, please.
Good evening. Thanks everybody for attending virtually and in person. My name is Jeremiah Gardner. I went to most of my childhood here and most of my schooling, middle school and high school. I then left the island for some time and returned about 15 years ago to purchase a local business. Over the years, we've kind of seen this steady decline, especially if you rotate it back into the 90s and whatnot. And now that I'm here raising my own family and they're entering the school system, and I'm seeing the difficulties that are portrayed in everyday life trying to conduct business here in Kodiak, I think it's important that it's everybody's civic duty to step up and serve at some point. And that's why I'm here. I want to be a part of making this island as great as it can possibly be. And at the end of the day, I also want to thank all the other people running for positions for both the borough and the city. It's amazing to see so much more participation, and I think the entire community of Kodiak is going to luck out with their options. Thank you.
Moving on, Rob Lindsay, you're up next.
Excuse me. Good evening. Thanks again for this opportunity. Thank you for hosting. Lifelong, born here, a lot of roots here. I pretty much fished everything there was to fish and worked in pretty much every sector that you can find on the island, short of flying the airplanes. But I did work for Bob Hall with Kodiak Airways for a couple of summers. And, we see the trend. Fisheries is not the main thing it was. A lot of challenges there. We also have a lot of consolidation in the processing sector. I think our future is extremely bright. I think Kodiak is so strategic, so well-placed, and so rich in geographic and history. And we have things that people are just giving up whatever it is to come here and see what we've got. And I'd like to preserve that as much as possible. I'm raising a grandson. He's 10, and I owe a deep debt to the schools and the teachers, and I want to make sure that we can maximize the education component, and appreciate your time.
Caroline Roberts, your 1 minute.
Good evening. My name is Caroline Roberts, and I'm running for Kodiak Borough Assembly because I want our community to continue being a place where families, businesses, and individuals of all ages can thrive. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and 3 years ago, my family and I moved to Kodiak to plant roots and make this our home. As a mom of 2 young kiddos, I see both the opportunities and the challenges our community faces, and I want to help ensure Kodiak remains family-friendly, welcoming, and sustainable for everybody. My background is in public safety as a 911 dispatcher, marketing and communications, and now population health, roles that strengthen my skills in problem solving, collaboration, and clear communication. Thank you.
Christina Van Hoogmode, you're up next.
Good evening. My name is Christina Van Hoogmode. I'm also known colloquially as K-Van. The people of Kodiak deserve to be safe, seen, and supported by their government and community. When I was a teacher, my purpose was to empower my students and give them the tools to be successful. I want to do the same for Kodiak. As Assemblywoman, I will make it a priority to respect and invest in Kodiak's #1 resource, our people. Even now, I'm constantly talking to people in every part of the community. I want to get everyone involved in decision-making. The people of Kodiak are craving connection and purpose. Right now, we have a very small amount of people that make the decisions, but it takes a village. Luckily, we have a bunch of them. If I'm elected, I look forward to continuing to listen to the people of our community and welcoming their voices. Thank you.
Jeffrey Woods, your 1 minute.
Good evening, all. My name is Jeffrey Woods. I have spent my entire adult life in Kodiak, graduating Kodiak High School, and obtaining my associate's degree through the Kodiak College. I've spent my career for the most part in public safety, although I have done a couple other things in my career relating to working for the hatchery for a while, doing some guiding here and there, and just absolutely am pleased to call Kodiak home. The reason I'm running for Borough Assembly is Kodiak well and truly is home, and I think we're a pretty exceptional place with exceptional people. I think the people of Kodiak deserve options, and I'm just here to provide another option. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you all for your answers. We're now moving on to the questions part of the forum. We will have the questions on the board in front of you, right up there. And for listeners, we will repeat the question before each candidate answers, so please give us that time before moving on to the next candidate.
Beginning with Rob Lindsay. What connections, skills, and experience would you bring to the Borough Assembly that would otherwise not be represented by current members or your fellow candidates?
Well, I've spent between 6 and 7 years on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I learned a lot about how that process works here, also how it works other places. I've spent a lot of time as a former and current employee of the city of Kodiak in the utilities in the ground, and I've actually worked quite a number of contractors putting utilities in the ground. I'm acutely aware of our infrastructure situation, which is good, but it's very aging. We have a lot of things that are need to be addressed, and I like to approach them in a proactive fashion. I'm very well familiar with the fishing community from every sector. Presently, I just recently sold my Prince William Sound seine permit, and I still retain my Kodiak seine permit. I'm very pleased that the salmon guys had a good year, which is critical because we have seen there are almost no little shoulder seasons left. Doubtful whether we'll get a tanner season this year. Jigging went from a 3 to 5 month occupation where you could always go out and make a house payment to another derby fishery. We have a lot of competition. I also think that, as always, we're going to have fiscal issues, and I wouldn't say I would overlook anything as far as where we could go to look for economic gain, except I will hold the line that the last thing I will look at is another mill rate increase. I think that the federal component is strong. I am very appreciative of the federal agencies we have here, but I think by the same token they share a lot of the burden, and I think they are not going anywhere, and I think we need to work with them, in particular with our wastewater situation, possibly work jointly together on a wastewater plant that would help alleviate their needs and allow for Kodiak more expansion, as well as look forward to expansion around to the land around beyond Dead Man's Curve. Thank you.
And moving on to Carolyn Roberts. What connections, skills, and experience would you bring to the Borough Assembly that would otherwise not be represented by current members or your fellow candidates?
I have strong organizational skills, and I like to listen to everyone's ideas and take that into account when making a decision. I bring a voice to the table representing young families in the community, and I've worked in high-stress environments that make me really think about organize my thoughts in the moment and really make a organized decision. Also working full-time as a mother to 2 kiddos, really manage my time. Thank you.
Forgive me, getting used to this. What connections, skills, and experience would you bring to the Borough Assembly that would otherwise not be represented by current members or your fellow candidates?
I've only lived here 5 years, but one of the greatest things that I've been able to do is become in so many different parts of the community. I love talking to new people. I worked at Maine for 4 years and was able to meet a lot of students and their parents. So in actual terms of connections, I have a lot of connections. I got a call a few weeks ago. Somebody had an idea to put a play on, and then I was like, oh, I know somebody else that writes plays, and we were able to hook them up. Somebody needed help finding a face painter, and I was able to help them find that. So I think my sheer ability to get out into the community and go and meet people and ask people and connect with them is a very big asset. Another big thing is my background experience as a teacher. As a teacher, you have to take very dense, complicated information and break it down into smaller chunks, not only into a digestible way, but an interesting way. You got to make those kids pay attention. So I look forward to the challenge of learning about the government more and being able to take a step back and communicate with other people about how it works. Being able to explain big things like MAPTR. What is MAPTR? These complex ideas and restrictions and rules that surround our government. Also, I have a little bit of the audacity and enthusiasm. I'm excited about Kodiak's future. I am excited to go talk to people and bring them in, and I think we can do this together.
Moving on to Jeffrey Woods. What connections, skills, and experience would you bring to the Borough Assembly that would otherwise not be represented by current members or your fellow candidates?
Thank you, Brian. I have phenomenal analytical skills as well as critical thinking skills honed through a career in law enforcement. My daily, I have to interact with people from a wide range of backgrounds to accomplish a wide range of objectives, everything from employment to having to make critical decisions about recommendations for something as simple as sentencing or for something as complicated as a bail argument. Thankfully, I'm in a position where I get to work with everybody, and I love that fact. As a result, I've developed a true gratitude for the wide-ranging expertises within our community that are all over our community. Knowing how to utilize resources to put people in contact to get them where they need to go has been a real skill I've developed over the years, as well as building relationships with different tribal organizations, nonprofit organizations, and frankly, anybody who's willing to give a hand. Along with that, I've had to deep dive into reading a tremendous amount of statute over the years and how to practically apply it now in the moment and under high-stress situations. That's something that has become a bit of skill of mine, and I look forward to bringing that to the Borough Assembly.
Thank you. Jeremiah Gardner, what connections, skills, and experience would you bring to the Borough Assembly that would otherwise not be represented by current members or your fellow candidates?
Let's see. I have my finger on the pulse of the economic climate here in Kodiak. I'm constantly interacting and interfacing with not only business leaders, business owners, but also consumers throughout our business ventures that we operate on a daily basis here in town. I get to hear their concerns, I get to hear their triumphs, and I get to see what's working for whom and what's not working for whom. Skill-wise, I've always been able to see things from a middle ground. You and I don't need to agree. In fact, we can argue and we can debate in a healthy fashion. But We can also walk away from that and still be friends and neighbors. Even if we don't see eye to eye, perhaps we've met some middle ground and can see some of the pros and cons to each other's viewpoints. Experience-wise, I've been pretty heavily involved in the Kodiak political climate on and off over the years. I've done a lot of work with the Parks and Recreation system. I've done a lot of work with the school system. I've seen the ins and outs of much of the political workings throughout the Assembly and the City Council. And while I can't call myself an expert by any means, I'm excited to learn more and to be the best possible candidate I can be for everyone. Thank you.
Also, as a quick apology, I have a bit of a frog in my throat, so if I cough during your answer, I am sorry, truly. So, moving on, we're going to be starting with Caroline Roberts. As housing prices and the cost of living continues to increase, how would you, as a Borough Assembly member, support both incoming and established residents and businesses? What solutions would you pursue to make homes on the road system and in outlying villages more affordable places to live?
Kodiak's housing shortage is one of the biggest challenges that Kodiak faces for families and workers here. High rents and limited housing stock have made it really difficult for people to stay here. And too often, locals are priced out while outside buyers purchase homes and land. I think the borough can help by reviewing zoning, incentivizing development, and encouraging locally led projects through public-private partnerships and redevelopment of even older properties. I believe if the borough does sell land, covenants should be in place to ensure it's used for long-term home ownership, not short-term rentals. Our goal should be stable, affordable housing that allows people to put down roots and stay in Kodiak.
Thank you. Christina Van Hoogmode, as housing prices and the cost of living continue to increase, how would you, as Borough Assembly member, support both incoming and established residents and businesses? What solutions would you pursue to make homes on the road system and in outlying villages more affordable places to live?
Well, that's $1 million question, isn't it? Housing, we all love it. First, I would make it a priority. It's sort of, we've done a lot of talking and not a lot of action. And the power that the borough has is to zone and to tax. And those are the big ways that we can help. And open lands for purchase. And we can use those tools to incentivize bidding for first-time home buyers. I know I don't own my own home, and I know the headache that is being able to find a home here. And being able to be more flexible and thinking outside of the box. Mixed-use zoning. And looking into alternates, maybe even co-op housing, centralized spaces with tiny homes. And beyond that, we currently tax our short-term housing. There is a current fee for that, and that goes to tourism, our tourism funds. And I think it would be good if that went to go support long-term housing as well. We could work to incentivize denser housing and discourage vacancies. I know there's a bunch of vacant homes out there, and if we could provide some sort of incentive or encouragement for people to have those homes occupied by somebody instead of just sitting there.
Moving on to Jeffrey Woods. As housing prices and the cost of living continue to increase, how would you, as a Borough Assembly member, support both incoming and established residents and businesses? What solutions would you pursue to make homes on the road system and in outlying villages more affordable places to live?
Thank you. As you approach this issue, it's kind of a two-part issue. One, on the road system, land ownership is a little bit less complicated and a little bit less locked down. A large portion of road system lands are owned by the borough, so potentially borough lands could be opened up for development, which I am massively in support of. How that which land should be opened up and how you go about that process, I think really needs to start with a really hefty public comment period and really intentionally looking at where you're going. I, for one, at least on face value, am a big fan of the 257 odd acres between where the town side of Rezanoff is across from the dump and backing up towards Salif and the Mountain View area there. That's essentially not being used a whole lot. When it comes to the villages, land ownership is largely in the hands of native corporations. I don't really think there's a whole lot the borough could or should do to try and compel a private organization to open up land for development, especially if that's not the will of the village. That's not really our place. Thankfully, though, you kind of solve both problems as you in this question with the one action. You make more available. If you make more available, tax revenue goes up. Tax revenue goes up, you can potentially look at lowering tax rates and making it affordable for people who are already here. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremiah Gardner. As housing prices and the cost of living continue to increase, how would you, as a Borough Assembly member, support both incoming and established residents and businesses? What solutions would you pursue to make homes on the road system and in outlying villages more affordable places to live?
Okay, so obviously we have a housing shortage and nobody's been able to solve it. I'm a big fan of developing raw land. I look specifically at the land back behind the Dark Lake area. There's roughly some odd 300 acres or so back there that could be developed. It's relatively close to infrastructure. The other closest area I see, just like Mr. Woods said, is that area just after Deadman's. But, excuse me, he was talking Minoshka. Just after Deadman's, we have a lot of unused land, but we need to come into some sort of partnership between our native corporations and the United States Coast Guard. A lot of that land isn't being used to its full potential. And to that same effect, the United States Coast Guard, who I absolutely love and adore, they're continuing to bring in more staff, and it's causing us some more difficulty in our housing shortage. We just had all these new boats come in. They have support families, etc. There's got to be some middle ground where we can work together as several separate agencies to come up with some sort of solution. And one of the biggest factors here in my mind is financial forethought. We're not just going to open up some sort of area and pour a ton of money into infrastructure. That all needs to be tied in together. Zoning and codes in terms of off-grid living, whether or not you can have a rain catchment system or something like that, or where can you actually have a well? Is there brackish water nearby? Do we need to bring in city water supply? All those things need to be thought far ahead and in advance so that we can make some sort of modular system or modular forethought where we have access to those infrastructure needs and can apply them into the next development. Because make no mistake, Kodiak is growing. Yes, the fishing industry has had a few rough years, but it's had a great year this year, at least with salmon. And, we're seeing tourism increase, and those are my thoughts.
Rob Lindsay. As housing prices and the cost of living continue to increase, how would you, as a Borough Assembly member, support both incoming and established residents and businesses? What solutions would you pursue to make homes on the road system and in outlying villages more affordable places to live?
Well, before getting off too far into that, I want to state that I feel it's really important that my goal is that we're not just going to reach out and raise the mill rate or raise assessments other than what's required by the state. Now, there is land in several places available. We discussed that a little bit. Von Sheely should go up and over the hill, but that's, again, we got to put some very expensive infrastructure in the ground there. And it's not just that simple, because you have to look at the capacities of what we already have. And also with the wastewater treatment that the city has, it's a limited footprint. Unfortunately, we've gone to secondary treatment, which is very, very expensive to do. And I believe we're forever bound to that. So whatever we do to upgrade or replace the city wastewater treatment system is going to be key to opening up any of the areas that are close to town. I think that to do whatever we can to encourage a joint venture between the USCG and Kodiak, the landowner of the land around the corner from Dead Man's Curve, would be the best thing we could do. We have very little as the borough that can help that other than through the zoning process and be a sounding board for them. There is a proposal to bring the water line over that hump between where I think is American President Lines is right now and into that area. The Naval Reserve has a lot of old utilities in the ground, and as we're well aware in Kodiak, it's a rock. And when you go to put in utilities, such as to say, if you had utilities out in Menasha, you could put all kinds of lots. But it's, again, the cost of doing so. We do reach some areas with the present system we have. We have property, city property that's available all the way out to Abercrombie, and we have services out there that could be expanded to some extent. But I think at the root, we've got to work on the utilities and work together with the things that we have in hand for the short term.
Yeah.
Long term, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah. As a quick reminder, please wrap up your thoughts as quickly as possible after the timer sounds.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question, starting with Christina Van Hoogmode. The borough owns several underdeveloped properties, both on the road system and near the villages. What ideas do you have to better utilize underdeveloped or unoccupied facilities in areas?
I don't think I'm the right person to make that call. I think that's a bigger thing than I'd want to hear more from constituents about that. On specific parcels, on specific buildings. I know some things that we've talked about that's come up a lot was the old mental health buildings, which are a conundrum unto themselves. And we tried to make the borough tried to make it work, and it doesn't seem to be working. But I think that the neighbors and the people closest to those properties need to be consulted when looking to utilize those. And we should also be looking at what our town needs and what our town is missing. I don't know, crazy idea. Do we want a community banya or something? I don't know, that we could all go together. It's really looking at our needs, what we have, what we need, and what we want. And the people that are closest to those parcels of land would know better, so I would be consulting with them.
And moving on to Jeffrey Woods. The borough owns several undeveloped properties, both on the road system and near villages. What ideas do you have to better utilize undeveloped or unoccupied facilities and areas?
Thank you. Well, the first step is realizing not every property is good for everything. Planning and zoning plays a huge role in that. I, for one, would like to see a substantial amount more of RR1 zoned lots. That opens up a great deal of flexibility, largely single-family homes, lets you have a mother-in-law. That's a particularly mother-in-law apartment, I should say, that the other one's not entirely a city or borough matter. Sorry. With regards to that, though, another real issue we do have in Kodiak is a massive lack of commercial space. Talking to some local business owners, trying to expand their operations is cost prohibitive due to the high cost of usable commercial land. And that's where I think coming in through and actually looking at these parcels we're talking about, having an informed discussion, inviting a tremendous amount of public comment for these areas is absolutely critical. I'm one voice, I'm one set of eyeballs looking at a project, and frankly, I am not a construction worker, nor have I ever been a contractor. Being able to accomplish these designs is going to largely depend on what's actually feasible. For me, commercial property is huge, taxed at a fairly high rate. It adds a secondary benefit to the community. I really like RR1 zoning, particularly for that Menasha Bay area we discussed. And those public-private partnerships can be a phenomenal thing when closely and carefully administered. But yeah, that is that is my take on that.
Thank you. Jeremiah Gardner, the borough owns several underdeveloped properties, both on the road system and near villages. What ideas do you have to better utilize underdeveloped or unoccupied facilities and areas?
So this question feels a little bit like part 2 to the prior question to me. Undeveloped properties, like we just said, housing is a huge issue. Mr. Woods is also correct. Commercial space is pretty hard to come by. And we need to make doing business in Kodiak easy. It generates taxes all across the board. And it's always been a little difficult. And I know firsthand from owning a couple businesses that it's not easy doing business in Kodiak. There's a lot of ups and downs, and the more that we can do to attract and develop that industry, the better we all are off for taxes and services. Additionally, going back to housing, one thing that I've always really wanted to see in Kodiak that you see down in the Midwest is a homesteading program. I would love to see the opportunity for young families to get a plot of land in a relatively inexpensive way and to be given a period of time to build a primary family dwelling that would be maintained as their primary dwelling for, say, 10 years or whatever the contract provides. We need to get people to be able to live here sustainably in order to attract the skilled specialists and leaders that this community needs that are often, frankly, turned away due to the rising cost of living. My primary function on undeveloped property for both the road system and the village would likely be housing. We have the highest rent in the entire state at a median rent of $1,713. That's pretty ridiculous to think you're a single person that wants, a reasonably sized little apartment that you're going to have to spend $1,700 a month in rent. So we need to address that problem first, and I would put that as my priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Rob Lindsay. The borough owns several undeveloped properties, both on the road system and near villages. What ideas do you have to better utilize undeveloped or unoccupied facilities and areas?
I don't have a lot of ideas that are going to be fresh and new. Take, for example, Cliff Point. We see a very forward-looking project out there. I think it will develop over time. I'm not sure if the developers are really happy with how that worked out in the end. It's gorgeous out there. Underutilized properties is kind of a catchword. We're just talking about vacant pieces of land. The borough has one system of selling property that's generally proved. That's by public outcry auction. And another way is to have qualified contractors, developers, agencies come forward with their ideas, such as the native corporations have some ideas using their land, or in the past they've approached about buying certain pieces of city land. Most of the land that you're looking at is more in the hands of the city. I think for the overall scope of what you're addressing, this is more of a planning and zoning, and it's a planning part. And again, developers bring forth proposals in the villages. I think that the villages have to have the 90% of the say. Port Lions, for example, had a kind of a massive shift in home ownership there in the last decade and a half. And some of the younger people that had left and houses, land got developed and pretty nicely subdivisions and a lot of homes there. But it kind of priced out some of the younger people that now would be looking to move back. So I think that's very much up to the villages primarily, and the road just assists them to seek what they want. I'd like to see, again, preserve that way of life. The native corporations have a tremendous amount of land, and I think they're private landholders, and they can sell land if the price is right. Thank you.
Thank you. Caroline Roberts. The borough owns several underdeveloped properties, both on the road system and near villages. What ideas do you have to better utilize underdeveloped or unoccupied facilities and areas?
Just piggybacking off the last question, housing is obviously a really big problem here. So opening some of that land open, but make it affordable for the middle class to be able to actually buy it and not be competing with off-island big people that have a lot of money to spend on it. Make it affordable for the young families that are here and convince them to stay here and grow this economy and make Kodiak a great place to live. Another thing that I have and our family has been restricted by here is childcare. Childcare is such a desperate need here in the community, and having a vacant building or land that could be made available to a childcare facility would be amazing and greatly appreciated by so many families here. That would be a huge incentive for people to go back to work and then therefore put money back into the local economy. As far as the vacant land, I think we should listen to the community members that know those properties and talk to them about what they want to do with it and what ideas do they have. Looking at the needs and wants, just making a financially responsible decision at the end of the day.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question, starting with Jeffrey Woods. The future of the former Northstar Elementary building is still yet to be determined. How do you think this facility should be used, and what kinds of services or businesses should be prioritized?
Thanks much. Northstar's got a phenomenal location in a lot of ways, but like any existing infrastructure, it still has maintenance projects that are going to be continuing expenses. What would I like to see in that facility? I would love to see childcare. Ms. Roberts hit it on the nail on the head. We do suffer from a massive lack of childcare. And essentially, we have a building that's sitting vacant that was used for child education. It seems really well suited for it. Bigger issue you have with that, though, is how do you practically make that happen? We, in the past, I believe we had a nonprofit, it was Small World, I believe was the nonprofit a number of years ago, which was kind of plagued by some issues. But that was more administrative issues. And then begs the question, okay, who's then responsible for the day-to-day operations of that? How does that look? I'd be supportive of an entity trying to take that over to use that as a child care facility. That seems to be appropriate to me. However, it's got to be financially responsible for the borough to do so. And with no current plans in the works, there's just too much that remains to be seen for what should happen to that building for me to take a firm stance on it beyond what I would like to see happen.
Thank you. And next up to Jeremiah Gardner. The future of the former Northstar Elementary building is still yet to be determined. How do you think this facility should be used, and what kinds of services or businesses should be prioritized?
So first of all, Northstar is a pretty amazing facility, and one of the first things that comes to mind is that before my family moved here in 1996, I lived in Bristol Bay, and we had the community school building up in Naknek, and yeah, classes happened there during the day, but events happened there every single night that were for the entire community, and it was we have options here compared to Bristol Bay, but it was a hotbed of community activity at all times. I think it's important to recognize that the building and the land around it is already kind of optimized for children. You've got a nice playground right there. It's fenced in. It's a safe space. It's a beautiful building. So I absolutely love the idea of childcare in at least some form in that building. It's obviously not going to take up the entire building, so there's got to be room for other community services in there. Maybe it's continuing adult education and some sort of slight expansion for the community college. I'm not sure how much interest there is in that. But first and foremost, with that building has to, again, be financial forethought. It's my understanding that the building needs quite a bit of money in repairs. And how are we going to pay for that in order to actually use that building? Can we get businesses like the childcare to essentially rent space from us and make it financially feasible and make it profitable in a way where they're paying the borough rent to use the space, but they're also making a profit off of the space, and we can use those rents to support that building and to support the infrastructure in and around it to keep it up to code and up to date. Like I said, I think it's just important to remember that place is already optimized for children. So that should be a big part of that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob Lindsay, the future of the former Northstar Elementary building is still yet to be determined. How do you think this facility should be used, and what kind of services or businesses should be prioritized?
As I understand it, and I don't know how confidential the negotiations are at this time, but we have a qualified entity that has already put forward an agreement, and they're, as far as I know, hammering out the terms to take over one wing of Northstar for childcare. I'm not sure the age range. I know that that agency has at least 50 people on their waiting list, and they already have a qualified childcare. I agree. I also think that one thing that could be done, because I look at my options, I got a boy, and he's a handful. He grew up with me. He's a guy who's been on the boat, and he has a little trouble in the regular public school surroundings. He's a good hand on the boat. Nonetheless, I think that I can't homeschool him. I'm not qualified. I can't seem to find someone to do that for me. And I have seen a marvelous example of a public-private partnership of a school in Queen Anne area of Seattle. It was magnificent. And every time your kid was there, a parent was there with him. The parents took on most of all the heavy lifting. And I don't know, the bills got paid, but it's one potential that could exist. I'm not speaking that it must be done. Right now it's on the books, and we have to keep it maintained. I think that all options are on the table. That was an awful tough site to develop. I'm not sure it was 100% sought through, but I don't know if you've driven out there in the middle of January, and it's raining on that ice, and those roads are practically vertical. The streets are not very well lit. There's an awful lot of big brown critters run around there. And so as a choice for a school, it was there. Nonetheless, it's an asset we have on the books. Again, it comes down to what the public wants, and I think it's a subject of greater discussion. I don't have a dog in this fight, except I'd encourage them to take that child care. And I know it's on it's either a 1 year or 2 year maximum lease, so it wouldn't tie it up. So I encourage that to go forward. And that's about all the specifics I have on that. Good question. Thank you.
And moving on to Caroline Roberts. The future of the former Northstar Elementary building is still yet to be determined. How do you think this facility should be used, and what kind of services or businesses should be prioritized?
I will always say childcare when there is a space available. Northstar was obviously created with children in mind, so it is an optimal space for a childcare facility to go. The YMCA has shown substantial interest in coming to the island to be an affordable and trusted childcare facility. They're established all over the country, and they're a nonprofit. I think they would bring a great service to Kodiak. I would like to see Northstar used year-round, hosting summer camps, daycare for kids of all ages, and as a place for the community to gather at and benefit from. The YMCA is already in motion in the community. We have some leaders in the community that we can work with to look into this option. I would really love to see Northstar used as a childcare facility that the whole community could benefit from.
Thank you. Christina Van Hoogboot, the future of the former Northstar Elementary building is still yet to be determined. How do you think this facility should be used, and what kind of services or businesses should be prioritized?
I see a lot of potential in the Northstar space. It sort of reminds me of when I was a kid and my parents would go to ministry meetings at church, and they would have lots of meetings there, and then I would go and play on the playgrounds outside, and it was just sort of a general gathering space. I think we can make it, we can do childcare there. I think that we can have space for art there. I think we can use the kitchen for more creative things that we want to. I think we can, we need to see what the people in this community are passionate about and are champions for. Like the YMCA, they got a champion. They came together. They made it happen. The child care center that's currently in negotiations or working on it, they had a mission, they went to it. But in general, I think it should be not-for-profit businesses or organizations that are going towards the public good, going towards the mission of a more prosperous future. Maybe we have a lot of businesses that are just pop-up businesses, maybe some of the space could be used for that. I think we are really limited only by our imaginations on this. Childcare and our needs definitely have priority, but we can also use the space for doing things as a family. If we wanted to have resources there, like little art rooms for kids to go use. If we had a shared community cricket or something that people could work on, or yes.
Yeah. And moving on to the next question, we're back to starting with Jeremiah Gardner. Despite the recent funding boost from the state, the Kodiak Island Borough School District is likely facing further significant budget cuts. How would you approach the funding request from district officials?
If I were to come into being one of your elected officials, one of the things I'm always going to preach is fiscal responsibility. One of the reasons that I'm running is that I feel like over time, we're always spending more than we actually have. We're always spending more than is in the coffers. And ultimately, that ends up putting the burden on the Kodiak taxpayer. The Kodiak taxpayer has had enough. It can't go up anymore. We need to come up with creative solutions to keep those taxes down. At the same time, as I've stated previously in the newspaper and other forums, we need to make our children and their education an absolute number one priority. They are going to be your leaders, your caregivers, and your professionals later in the future. And to do anything less is simply shooting ourselves in the foot. Whilst prioritizing education, we have to be aware that we have an allowance of money. And we can't spend more than that because we don't have it. I love the idea of giving the children everything in the world, and that's what I strive to do with my own family and my own children. But at the end of the day, the paycheck is what it is, and that's what we have to spend. So further significant budget cuts, we need to address and approach any available funding that we can get from the state. I think Governor Dunleavy is not long for the governorship, and we may get an attitude change in the state government and start to see some of those education funds come back. And actively pursuing that and any grants possible is one avenue to get money back in the schools, but we can't keep overspending. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob Lindsay, despite recent funding boost from the state, the Kodiak Island Borough School District is likely facing further significant budget cuts. How would you approach the funding request from district officials?
Well, first of all, that's a school board decision firstly, and I think at the assembly level, we take what they send us, and then we either approve it or have to send it back. And at the end of the day, we do only have so many dollars to work with. And again, I'm not going to look to the mill rate. In many communities, it winds up being older people that have already raised their children, moved on, that bear the bigger cost because their homes have appreciated in value and their taxes go up. So I'm not see it going that way. I do think that the community really needs to prioritize. We do have a great sports program, and I'm not going to put sports on the table except that you can't have it all. And there just have to be priorities made at every level. But it seems that the state of Alaska in general is a race for the bottom. We're spending, as far as I understand, I don't know locally, but statewide, it's about $27,000 per student. And we're only, and I may get the numbers mixed up, we're only 16% on math and 20-something% in reading. And we need to see improvement in that. I don't think it's on the teachers so much. I've got a kid that's tough to teach. He's super bright. I mean, I don't know where to go with it, but I think that everybody needs to pull on it. The community needs to decide where the priorities are, and then that's the thing for the people to come to the assembly with. And once we get a list of priorities, then we can look and we go, okay, this is here. We have some very expensive programs that, and with Title IX, it has to be the same for the boys and the girls. So I say it's up to the school board to prioritize it, and if we can't fit it within the budget, then we'll have to send it back. But again, it falls on every one of us voters to speak out to me, the other members of the assembly, and the school board, and we've got to give the school board their due. It's in their hands first before it comes to us. I wish it could be more specific. Thank you.
And moving on to Caroline Roberts. Despite the recent funding boost from the state, the Kodiak Island Borough School District is likely facing further significant budget cuts. How would you approach the funding request from district officials?
The borough plays a key role in supporting schools, and I believe strong schools are the foundation of Kodiak's future. That means not only providing stable funding, but also maintaining facilities with basic upkeep, like painting, playground maintenance, and repairs. If state funding is reduced, we need to seek creative solutions like grants, partnerships, community support to make sure these essential programs remain strong. I think protecting education is one of the most important investments we can make for Kodiak's long-term success. We need to work with our school district to ensure that we are financially able to pay for a well-rounded education for our kids.
Thank you. Christina Van Hoogmoot. Despite the recent funding boost from the state, the Kodiak Island Borough School District is likely facing further significant budget cuts. How would you approach the funding request from district officials?
So funding the school district is the primary purpose of the borough. That it was when the borough was founded and part of the charter, is one of its primary purposes is to ensure the school district has enough money. Unfortunately, the state has chosen to not keep up as much as it was before. We are also only able to give a certain amount. Like there is a set fixed number that we are not allowed to go over, or else the state government will sue us. That's happening in Juneau. In our last budget, we gave about $13 million to the school district, which was up about a little more than $500,000 from the year before, but it wasn't nearly enough to make. They had to withdraw $5 million from their fund balance, which I heard they have like $20 left. Don't quote me on that, but they had to go a lot from their fund balance. I personally think it is our moral obligation to support our kids and our families as much as possible. We can elect school boards that make good choices, but we also need to trust our educators when they say what they need, and then we will give it to them. We are not overspending on it. We are actually limited in how much we can spend on the school district. We can't provide over that amount. And I think we can also look at other ways to support our kids, such as childcare, since we are limited by how much we can give to the school district. But we are approaching the maximum legal amount of what we can give.
And Jeffrey Woods. Despite the recent funding boost from the state, the Kodiak Island Borough School District is likely facing further significant budget cuts. How would you approach the funding request from district officials?
Well, ultimately, you can't get water from a stone. The issue we run into with the school district is multi-part, really. One, our revenues aren't necessarily increasing apace with our expenditures. Something needs to be done to increase tax revenue. I am not a huge fan, or not a fan at all, of raising mill rates. I think the Kodiak taxpayer is pretty well tapped out, and it can't go any higher. The solution to that is finding new revenue sources and looking at it creatively. Hence why, for me, it's a big, big push to open up unused and underutilized lands. The flip side is our school district has not been performing well. I don't think you can tell me anybody in town here who thinks our standardized testing scores look particularly good. I think amongst ninth graders, it's just a little over 13% are testing at or above grade level for math. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry, But if you have to look at any major expenditure from a budget, much like an investment. If your investments are underperforming, why are we essentially rewarding poor performance? Which I don't think there's a person in this town who can say that they're happy with 13% for math. Beyond that, I am not a huge fan of cutting programs. However, the time where we're at, where unless we can get some new funding sources, it's time to tighten some belts.
Thank you. And back to Rob Lindsay for this next question. Some village residents feel that their needs are not a priority when compared to communities on the road system. Do you believe the borough fairly represents them and addresses their needs? How would you work to improve relationships with village residents and leaders?
Well, that's a tough one right there. It's hard because we don't really go out and hang out in the villages a whole lot. I know a lot of people in the villages. I have myself spent a lot of time in the villages as of lately. I don't think that the situations, they're unrepresentative per se. It's just that that line of communication needs to be worked on. How you accomplish that, I don't know. It's not on my radar. I feel deeply about the rights of those that have chosen to remain in the village, to control their own destiny as best they see fit. And I think that we have an obligation to help them meet their water and wastewater needs as mandated by the state. And I would like to make myself open to everyone in the villages because they're a big part of what makes Kodiak so special and so special to me. We live in an extraordinary place where I don't think there's any place on this planet that you could get what we have here. I think subsistence is big. I hear there's some new challenge on the radar regarding the Katie John decision. I don't know where that lands right now, but I do know that subsistence is critically important, and it's very important. We're so blessed that here in this residential community we have access to federal subsistence. I just was out at the buskin today with my kid, but so the federal land subsistence is a huge issue, and I want to make sure we're attentive to that and that we're keyed in and ready to speak up to that. I just know that there's a lot of issues with the systems, their critical utilities, as well as their school systems. And I don't have any pat answer to tell you right now how to cure that. I don't feel that is by design, and I'm open. Thank you.
Thank you. And Caroline Roberts. Some village residents feel that their needs are not a priority when compared to communities on the road system. Do you believe the borough fairly represents them and addresses their needs? How would you work to improve relationships with village residents and leaders?
Kodiak is really a melting pot. It's a really diverse population, and that diversity should be reflected in how the borough engages with residents. I believe we can expand our outreach and make sure information is accessible, including in the languages people use at home. We also need to make sure our villages are included and that resources are distributed fairly across the entire island. It's equally important to encourage youth and diverse candidates to get involved in local government so that future leaders reflect the community as a whole. When more voices are represented, both from the road system and the villages, our decisions are stronger and better serve everyone in Kodiak. I think really just listening to everyone in the villages and everyone in the community is key.
Thank you. Christina Van Hoogboot. Some village residents feel that their needs are not a priority when compared to communities on the road system. Do you believe the borough fairly represents them and addresses their needs? How would you work to improve relationships with the village residents and leaders?
I don't think the borough fairly represents them and addresses their needs appropriately. I think that there should be a seat on the borough assembly specifically designated for people that live in the villages. A few years ago, it came across the assembly to look at restructuring the way elections happened in that like different neighborhoods could vote for their assembly person. And it's sort of just got swept under the rug. I think there should be somebody zooming in from each village, if possible, but somebody that it is their whole focus is to take care of people in the villages and listen. Additionally, we should have our borough assembly members going out to the villages at least quarterly and using some of, it should be a budgetary priority to make those connections, because making connections is an investment and will create revenue and community in the long run. If we can get to the villages, have housing, and talk to more people. Personally, I've never been off the road system, and it's cost prohibitive for me. So just getting places, talking to people, making in those relationships, and that's what assembly people are for. That's what I want to do.
Up next, Jeffrey Woods. Some village residents feel that their needs are not a priority when compared to communities on the road system. Do you believe the borough fairly represents them and addresses their needs? How would you work to improve relationships with village residents and leaders?
I love this question. I spend quite a bit of time in Port Lions, where I've got phenomenal friends and friends that have become family to me over the years, people that have known me my entire life. So when I decided to run for borough, I phoned a friend, like you do for everything in Kodiak, it seems like. And I asked them, hey, what is your guys' interaction with the borough like? All they could tell me was they met the borough assessors people, they were super nice, and my taxes went up after that. If I don't think you can honestly say we adequately consider their needs or we fairly represent them. You have to look at everybody in our community, not just the road system. And I know the road system's easy to access, and it's as simple as driving down somewhere to go look at problems. However, our villages are still a huge part of Kodiak. I would personally love to see a substantial amount more of joint work sessions between village leadership and tribal leadership. Like I've mentioned before, village councils play a big part, but tribal leadership plays a huge part in those areas. This summer I got to go to Old Harbor, got to do some talking with some folks over there, had a great time. It was a great work trip. But there it seems that the tribe is a larger part of the community than their actual city is. Or I think there's technically a second-class city in the borough. Bringing people to the table is never a bad idea. Hearing different perspectives is never a bad idea. Even if you don't like them, if you don't get along, even if you can't make it happen budgetarily, being on the same page and same sheet of music can only do you good. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremiah Gardner. Some village residents feel that their needs are not a priority when compared to communities on the road system. Do you believe the borough fairly represents them and addresses their needs? How would you work to improve relationships with village residents and leaders?
As far as addressing the needs of the villages, that's a question I'm ill-equipped to answer. I haven't spent a ton of time in the villages. That's something I'd love to hear about from the people that live in the villages. As far as representation goes, as often as I've been involved in various meetings throughout local politics, I've never seen any representation of anyone in the villages. So no, I don't think they're fairly represented, and I don't think that their needs are fairly communicated to that effect. As far as improving relationships, some of the other people up here are exactly right. We need to meet with their leaders, whether that's a village council, tribal, whatever that is. However, I don't see the cost effectiveness in flying out to those villages frequently or flying other people from the villages to town. I see no reason why we shouldn't have tribal and village councils on Zoom here in the middle of the borough assembly. I see no reason why they don't have a voice on the borough assembly. And in lieu of this vacant spot that has just opened up on the borough assembly, this is a great time to get started with representing the villages better. I don't hear about their needs very often. To be honest, when I talk to my friends in the villages, we talk about fishing and hunting and recreating, and I don't really hear about their needs because I've never been in a position to do something about it. But I look forward to learning about your needs and to being able to help.
And moving on, we're going to start with Caroline Roberts. Both state and federal capital improvement project funds have become more competitive in the last year, but the borough still needs money to maintain infrastructure both on the road system and in the villages. How can the borough improve its efforts to find funds for these types of projects? And what projects would you prioritize if elected to the Borough Assembly?
Kodiak has important projects that haven't received the funding they need, and I believe we need to keep pushing for them. For me, the top priorities are basics that directly impact people's daily lives. Roads are critical for safety, making sure families and businesses can get where they need to go. I know all of us have hit a pothole that is deceiving and is bigger than it looked like it was going to be. Harbor improvements are essential to supporting our fishing economy and the jobs tied to it. Schools need to be safe and reliable learning environments for our kids. And water and sewer systems are fundamental to protecting public health and quality of life. And recently, there was a study about the bridges out in Women's Bay. I think that should also be a priority with the flooding issues. These are the types of projects that should stay at the top of our list.
Thank you. Christina Van Hugmode, forgive me. Both state and federal capital improvement projects have become more competitive in the last year, but the borough still needs money to maintain infrastructure both on the road system and in the villages. How can the borough improve its efforts to find funds for these types of projects? And what projects would you prioritize if elected to the Borough Assembly?
I recently learned the phrase PILT, which is payment in lieu of taxes. And this is money from the federal government that we get because the Coast Guard doesn't pay property taxes, all of these exemptions that we have in our community. And they pay a nominal fee by some magic formula to in addition to our budget. I think we should do more lobbying to get greater PILT. I know Cordova gets a good amount of money for their projects through the PILT. Looking at specific projects, one locally is looking at our landfill. We need to do a lot of thinking about our landfill, and the budget is definitely a priority. So we're going to have to get creative with our solutions. We're going to have to all pitch in and recycle more, figure out how to use things. Also, funding our harbor. Harbor is not a thing that we can pitch in and recycle as much for. We're going to have to fund that. That is a backbone of our economy. It's sort of like, are we going to pay the electricity in this room? Yeah, we have to. It's like we need it if we want to keep going. Looking at other capital projects, I noticed some things going forward, like the Chiniac water is a priority, figuring out that balance. And I really give credit to Carlick trying to do the food independence. We can work with grants for that and more. Yes.
And then moving on to Jeffrey Woods. Both state and federal capital improvement project funds have become more competitive in the last year, but the borough still needs money to maintain infrastructure both on the road system and in the villages. How can the borough improve its efforts to find funds for these types of projects, and what projects would you prioritize if elected to the Borough Assembly?
Thank you. The borough can improve its efforts to try and find funds by either A, delineating an individual who's already a staff member to act as a grant writer to try and obtain more federal funds, or to create a new position for that. Are we in a position to do that? Not necessarily. However, looking at what positions are vacant, that could be something looked into. How do we prioritize which capital projects to work on? we talk about the city and the borough like they're these two separate, completely non-touching entities, which is just, I think, a little bit simplistic. The issue we have is each affects the other. So when it comes to let's pick on the Chiniak Creek washout there, that's a bunch of different native land out there that's no longer accessible, and there's quite a bit of BLM land out past that that's no longer accessible. That bridge has been out for, 5 or 6 years or better. That could certainly be a priority. There's going to take some investment there. The flip side of that, too, is, like I said, we talk about city and borough like they don't really communicate a whole lot. The harbor is a big project, and if we want to expand the borough properties, we're going to need to seriously look at how can the borough help fund some of these major infrastructure projects, such as the water and sewer expansion that we're talking about. Funding, I'm certain, exists. However, we need to seriously investigate who we task and how we task them with seeking some of these federal funds that are available through a wide range of grant programs and utilizing our private-public partnerships like Soil and Water Conservation District. I was talking to one of them the other day. They had the money to redo the bridge out in Chiniak. Nobody wanted to take over responsibility for maintaining it. That's an unacceptable dropping of the ball, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Now back over to Jeremiah Gardner. Both state and federal capital improvement project funds have become more competitive in the last year, but the borough still needs money to maintain infrastructure both on the road system and in the villages. How can the borough improve its efforts to find funds for these types of projects, and what projects would you prioritize if elected to the Borough Assembly?
Finding funds for projects, to me, is going to involve increasing revenue and generally doing that by increasing a tax base. So this goes back to several other questions that we've already answered for me. Opening up land opens up property taxes, whether that's commercial or residential. Whatever works for that area is what's best for that area. Additionally, just making it easier to do business in Kodiak is going to generate more tax revenue. For us at the borough, that's generally going to be in the form of property tax. In the city, obviously, that's going to circulate around sales tax, and that's really neither here nor there for this conversation. As far as which projects to prioritize, anything to do with schools, well, again, keeping fiscal forethought in mind. We need to be taking better care of our roads. We keep getting companies from off island to come and take bids, and they're not as familiar with what needs to be done on these roads. I've had plenty of talks with friends that work for Brecken, and they can reiterate to me all sorts of issues and how things are done wrong. And that's why you see the stretch of road from the Y out to Pasag. It looks like it was done not very long ago. You see the stretches in the middle, not so hot. We brought in a company from off island a couple years ago, and it fell apart really fast. Harbors need to be a huge, huge priority. The lifeblood of this town has been the fishing industry, and we need to support that. But there's a lot of other little pieces to that puzzle. We need to keep the fishermen here. They're going off to Homer to sell fish, even though there's that fuel cost. They're going off to ports down in Washington to do repairs because the cost of the repair outweighs the cost of the fuel to get there. But a lot of that conversation goes hand in hand with city and ports and harbors. Thank you.
All right, we're going to do one more question. We're going to start with Caroline Roberts. Christina Van Hoogboot. Forgive me. What's your vision for the Kodiak Island Borough's future, and how do we get there? Oh, Rob, sorry. Rob Lindsay, forgive me. Both state and federal capital improvement project funds have become more competitive in the last year, but the borough still needs money to maintain infrastructure. What?
I'm not sure if these questions are.
The last couple of questions were not on that, in that PowerPoint.
Oh, sorry, these questions are not on the slides.
Yeah. Ooh, we didn't notice.
Some of your answers have been shorter, so it's allowed for more time, and I think in the pre-planning, they weren't put in.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry
I
about that.
can go ahead with the question in the interest of time, and I'll try to keep it short. Harbors keeps coming up. That's a city issue. That's a big issue, and I'm currently working for the city. Somebody wants to talk about potholes, I can have a really in-depth discussion with potholes about how we do it and what we do it. Discussion about on-island, off-island contractors is kind of a moot point because there's a lot of sides to that issue. I think we need to look at a lot of forms of revenue. Again, this is not to the assembly, but we need to draw other things to the table that, Kodiak has, why don't we try and push this place to make films and movies here? You've got everything. The weather, the wind, the beast, all of it. I got to give a big shout out to Sam Much, because this is really where the driving comes. Sam is putting his money where his mouth is. He's building a cold storage facility that this town's needed forever. And God knows what it's costing him, but it's going to house 1.2 million pounds of frozen product. Half of it is already committed for by Silver Bay, but that's still 600,000 pounds, or give or take, of frozen product. And we really need to encourage our guys to be able to secondary process. Not only we have guys that have short seasons, and we need to, like the cod thing, it goes so fast now, and that was one of the things that guys could dabble in and get started in the secondary processing. We have some wonderful facilities on near island that we could help to, and not just our fishermen, but our processors. They're used to such short seasons now. As we can encourage people to prosper, they will have more money in their pockets. One of the things we got to look at is this federal presence. And again, I welcome them here. I like it here, but they've got to come to the table. You talk about the landfill. Well, Coast Guard people make trash too. We've all got an interest in this together. I think there's a chance to work, again, jointly on some big projects around the corner from Dead Man, and you'll get some growth and you'll get some property, maybe without having to put a whole lot of money in infrastructure. And I think that's what we got to look at. We got to look at saving where we can.
Thank you. And sorry again for accidentally skipping you.
That's okay.
Moving on to the next question.
You still got time?
Yes.
All right, let's do one more. All right, here we go. Christina, what's your vision for the Kodiak Island Borough's future, and how do we get there?
I love this question because I love picturing what we could be. And it's amazing where we've gotten, and we can do so much more. 10 years in the future, 15 years in the future, I want us to be self-sustaining. We have the gift of living on an island with, I want to say, all our best friends. Like, people, that's crazy. We get to live with each other and take care of each other all the time. In the future, I don't remember how many years you said or any specific years or anything, I want us to be even more self-reliant as we can. With the way things are going, the states is having less to do with it, it seems, the federal government. We are going to take care of each other. I picture us returning sort of more towards those Alutiiq values of taking care of our elders, taking care of our community, sharing more responsibilities. I picture us treating each other as a family. I think we are in interesting times right now, and I feel like it's only going to bring us closer together. When somebody has an emergency in Kodiak, we step up, and I think we will continue to step up for each other. I think what we need is leadership. I think what we need is gathering. I think what we need is a return to taking care of the people right in front of us, and less looking at our screens, and more at each other. If I were to dream big, I would go towards our child care being more collective, making sure that everybody's kid is looked out for. Thank you.
Yeah. And up to Jeffrey Woods. What's your vision for the Kodiak Island Borough's future, and how do we get there?
My vision for Kodiak is one of economic growth. It's one where people my age can afford to have a family here and afford to grow businesses here. Currently, it's an incredibly tough environment to either A, have a family, B, grow a business, or C, even something as simple as home ownership. I see Kodiak in 10, 15, 20 years as a larger and larger military port. Maybe not ideally, but I think that's the way it's going to go. Not saying it's not ideal, I'm just saying it's probably the direction it's going to go with larger and larger Coast Guard investment. I think our fisheries are largely on the decline, and we have to somewhat prepare for that. I don't know that with some of those fisheries, there's a whole lot of hope for it getting better anytime soon. As much as I wish that wasn't the case, because any of you that knows may know I have a terrible outdoor addiction. How do we get there? We get there by increasing the tax base. How do we do that? We do that by opening up more land for development, but we do it responsibly, and we communicate about it. Communication is ultimately key, and that's something that historically the borough has not done a terribly good job of. Yes, we follow Open Meetings Act requirements. However, going above and beyond that has often been lacking. I would like to see us communicate more, and I tell people all the time, it's really hard to over-communicate. You may annoy somebody. That's a small price to pay for people being a part of the conversation and bringing their unique perspectives to bear on different issues. I see a bright future for Kodiak, but I see a time in between now and then where we have to buckle down, look at making hard choices, and accept reality for what it is and move forward. I look forward to working with all my friends and neighbors, and guys, it's gonna be a hell of a ride.
Thank you. Jeremiah, what's your vision for the Kodiak Island Borough's future, and how do we get there?
My vision for the borough's future is a profitable entity that's able to have some money in their pocket. We're able to deal with crises as they come and not having to run and look for a handout. A sustainable community. Groceries are a huge issue. There's got to be an easier way. I know some of our villages have dealt in hydroponics and other alternative sources and things. I don't know how feasible that is for the city. One thing that comes to mind is when our now borough manager had convinced Alaska Airlines to leave a flight here overnight. And so we always had that flight out in the morning, and how much that saved us. And maybe there's a partnership available with somebody like Alaska Airlines to help us get fresher groceries. Just the other week, I got a bunch of fresh stuff and I brought it to my cabin, and it was all rotten before the weekend was over. It was disgusting. Another thing I'd like to see for our future is a clean town. You go to other towns in Alaska, and they're not much different than ours in terms of size. They're not much different in terms of tax base. But you're seeing the services rendered from the powers that be that are superior to what we're doing. And beyond that, you're seeing community involvement where it's just clean. There's community pride. They've taken care of it. Anybody who's lived here for a while, if you think about Crab Fest in the 90s, how much community involvement was there? It was crazy. Yeah, we had cool rides that came down, but that wasn't the heart of Crab Fest. It was the people. Now, how do we get there? Tax base is essential, but also, like I said before, we need to make it easier to do business in Kodiak, and I think we need to keep construction and projects based on local companies. I know there's a lot to unpack on that topic, and there's other issues when you're bringing in an outside entity to complete a project. But when I see companies like Cornerstone working on the fire department here, that really bums me out. I want to see Brecken. I want to see Friend Construction. I want to see Wolf and Gray. I want to see those tax dollars stay here.
Thank you. And moving on to Rob Lindsay. What's your vision for the Kodiak Island Borough's future, and how do we get there?
Back to the future. A town where you didn't lock your doors. You left something downtown on the harbor. Whether you left it a day or a week, it was still there. Where neighbor loves neighbor. I love the USDA hoop houses. I'd like to see that program encouraged. I think it was a great thing. I'd like to see increasing progress towards food security. I think a number of our neighborhoods, and primarily a lot of the housing issues, they are city issues, not as much borough, but I think we have some areas that we could strongly look at for neighborhood revitalization. That's a complex thing. You've got to incentivize people to either upgrade or part with them. I could throw out half a dozen little neighborhoods that you could go, yeah, you could put something new. I'm a fan of I think that many cities, and this is probably me sacrilege here, and you may hang me on this, but I believe at some point in time, somebody's going to go first. And to solve these issues, many of them will be what we call, what most cities and towns are having to do. You go to mixed-use, medium-density, mid-rise buildings where you've got 2 or 3 floors of professional, commercial, and 3 floors perhaps of very, very nice residential properties. And I think being modern, efficient, you'll have reductions in water and wastewater as well as energy efficiency impairments. And you could put them, say, like out there where by Cana is a beautiful spot. That could be done and be close to things, make pedestrian access. It's all good. We have to look at the areas we already have instead of reaching out. One of the things that preserves the land, and it's sorry, but that's what's on the planning goes. You do put people closer together. You provide the access. I want to see a community that remains with what we have here. Strong subsistence access, everybody approachable, and another safe community.
Thank you. Thank you. Caroline, what's your vision for the Kodiak Islands Borough's future, and how do we get there?
Looking ahead 10 years, I hope to see Kodiak as a family-friendly and resilient community, strong schools, thriving local businesses, and sustainable opportunities for residents. We need to work to ensure that we are doing things that support local needs and strengthen Kodiak for the long term, not the short term. We get there by listening to the community's needs. We need to listen to everyone on and off the road system to be able to support each other and rely less on off-island resources. We get there by working with local businesses and farmers to grow the economy. In 10 years, I hope we are a community where people want to stay.
And that's it for the questions. We're moving on to closing statements. As a reminder, you will have 1 minute to share your final thoughts for listeners and the audience.
Flipping the rotation, we'll start with the last candidate first. Jeffrey Woods.
First off, I just want to thank KMXT for hosting this. This is a tremendous public service that you guys do, and thank you for all your hard work and staying up late for getting this done for all the staff that's here today and everybody else who makes what happens happen. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come to speak to everybody here. I am tremendously grateful to be able to run to be a Borough Assembly member here. I cannot tell you enough how excited I am for this opportunity and how much I look forward to having these great conversations for the next few years and being your Borough Assembly member. Thank you guys so much.
And up next, we have Jeremiah Gardner.
I love Kodiak. I love this community. And over the last 15 years, all of you have supported me and my family so much. And I hope that you felt that we supported you too, because we sure as heck tried. I do want to see Kodiak be the absolute best place that it possibly can be. And I'm excited about how much more involvement there is in this election cycle. I'm excited about the people that are sitting up here with me today. I think every one of these people has great ideas and has some solid contributions to give to you, and I feel the same way about the people on the city ballots. Really, no matter which way you vote, I think this is going to be a great year and the start of something tremendous. I hope I get your vote, but I think you're going to do great no matter what happens. So thanks so much for having me.
Thank you very much. Rob Lindsay.
Imagine, if you will, I wonder how much more we'd accomplish if we would fill this chambers with this many people at every meeting we come to. I come to a fair number of meetings, and usually there's just myself and a couple other people that are obligated to be there. And that's what, at getting the root of it, is that we all have a voice here. This is a very open place. I see this being, I love Kodiak. I don't really like the weather from January to March, but that aside, this is fantastic. We're getting such great exposure from the tourists. I think there's a lot of opportunities that we could look for additional income. And one thing that's going to happen, like it or not, is that with AI, we are going to see reduced cost in administration across the board. Now, we're also going to be able to provide a need for those people to transition to something else. Some of those folks that are in administration don't know how to work with their hands. I'd like to see more vocational training, and most of all, I want to see you guys here for the next 3 years. Thank you.
And Caroline Robbins, your closing thoughts.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity to share tonight. I'm running for the Assembly because I want to represent all of Kodiak, families, businesses, and villages alike, and make sure we're investing wisely in schools, public safety, and the services that keep our community strong. My approach is to listen, work together, and make decisions that keep Kodiak family-friendly, welcoming, and resilient for the future. I'd be honored to earn your support, and thanks again.
Thank you. And Christina Van Hoogmoot.
Thank you for everybody for showing up and tuning in tonight. I'm glad we can connect like this. I want to bridge the gap between the decision makers and the everyday folks. Everyone should know who to talk to install a crosswalk or get a pothole filled. Even I'm still learning. Local government is complex, but I want to look under the hood with you guys and see how we can make it run, or run better, at least. I'm excited there's so many people interested in this and being on the Assembly, and that I've been able to listen to you guys. It sounds like we have a really deep bench of ideas. These discussions are important to our community. If I'm elected, please know I'll be calling on you, all of you guys, and you people on YouTube and you people there, calling on everybody. We can't do this by ourselves. We are a village. Going to be calling on you for your expertise, for your brains. The Assembly is the tip of the spear, but you guys are the rest of the spear.
Thank you very much. That's it for the forums for the Kodiak Island Borough Assembly. Thank you again to all of our candidates for joining us this evening. Again, I'm your moderator, Neil Baselwiz.
And I'm Brian Benoit. We're going to take a quick break, but please stick around or stay tuned for the forums with the candidates for Borough Mayor. We'll be back in about 10 minutes. Good evening, and welcome back. If you're just tuning in, this is the candidate forum for the Kodiak Island Borough. We're about to talk to candidates for Kodiak Island Borough Mayor. I'm Brian Venwell, the senior reporter at KMXT. I've been here in Kodiak for the last 3 years.
My name's Neil Basewas. I'm with KVOK, and I've been in Kodiak since 2018.
And as we begin tonight's candidate forum, we'd like to acknowledge this event is being put together by KMXT, KVOK, and the Kodiak Chamber of Commerce.
Tonight's questions have been crafted by KMXT's news team in collaboration with the Kodiak Chamber of Commerce and KVOK. For transparency, some of the candidates running for this election this year are KMXT public radio staff. However, to maintain the fairness, impartiality, and integrity of this annual forum, none of the questions have been shared with any of the candidates ahead of the forum, which has been our standard for previous years as well.
Each candidate will have up to 1 minute for opening statements to introduce themselves. Once we begin questions, each candidate will have up to 2 minutes to answer, and we'll switch back and forth on who answers a question first. The forum will end with giving each candidate 1 minute for closing statements.
We will be using the timer in the Kodiak Island Borough Assembly's chambers, and the time starts when you begin speaking. If the timer goes off during a statement or answer, please wrap up your thoughts immediately. Starting with an open statements, we will go in alphabetical order by last name, beginning with
Scott Arndt, you're up first.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Scott Arndt. First came to Kodiak in May of 1964. So I was 10 years old at the time. And so I've grown up here, raised kids here, and have grandkids here. Been involved in local government, I'm going to say, since 1979. And have been on the Borough Assembly at different times. And for the last 2 years, have been the Borough Mayor. I'd like to do a full 3-year term, and then it's time for me to get out. So, thank you.
Jared Griffin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jared Griffin. I want to start off by thanking KMXT and KVOK, and especially the Chamber. I've been, in the past, I've worked on these forums before, and I know it takes a lot of work to put them together, so thank you so much for that. Kodiak's been my home for nearly 20 years. It's where my wife and I, we've raised our kids, and our adult children have found support here, and my son is growing up with that same sense of adventure and community that I had growing up in the Chugach foothills in East Anchorage. I grew up in a military family of faith, often moving, and I learned just how important stability is and just how strong communities are when neighbors step up for one another. And those lessons are why I've dedicated myself to serving Kodiak. I believe a mayor should be steady, transparent, collaborative. I bring that experience on the Borough Assembly as deputy presiding officer, and our nonprofits, where I've managed staff and balanced finances, at Kodiak College, where I teach the next generation of Alaskans, and with our Shakes Bears, where I build championships and leaders, and I'd like to lead and build a championship team at the Borough.
Okay. And moving on to the question portion of the forum, candidates may ask moderator to repeat the question before giving their answers on their turn. We will have questions up on the screen as well. Please. Time starts again when you begin your answer. And we're going to start with Jared Griffin.
Beginning with Jared Griffin, the first question is, what qualifies you to be the mayor of Kodiak Island Borough? What unique experience, skills, and connections would you bring to this position?
Thanks for that. Yeah, great question to open up with. I think I bring with me a breadth and depth of service to Kodiak, and that's, like I mentioned, on the Assembly, chairing the Health Facilities Advisory Board, being on the board of SWAMC, the Southwest Alaska Municipal Conference, chairing the Workforce Regional Advisory Council, the Joint Fisheries Work Group, Consolidation Committee. I have that kind of breadth and depth of service with the borough, but my nonprofit leadership, many of you are already familiar with, as part of that, and my education leadership at the college and work with the KBSD. I think all of them together, right, bring help build this sense of just why I love this place, because I feel like this place needs what I have. I believe a Kodiak deserves a mayor who listens and I listen. Mayor who plans ahead. I love planning. That's why I think I've succeeded so well in my work, is with planning. And also, I get along with this great borough staff. I think that's really key, making those relationships work. And I work well with the staff, and we can get a lot of projects done.
Thank you very much. Now over to Scott Arndt. What qualifies you to be mayor of the Kodiak Island Borough? What unique experience, skills, and connections would you bring to this position?
Well, number one, currently the mayor. Number one, I'm currently the mayor. Second, it begins with the length of public service that I've done. I've been on the Borough Assembly at different times, three different generations in there. I have been on the Planning and Zoning Commission and chaired it. I've been on the Lands Committee and chaired it. I've been on the Fire District 1 board and chaired it, Service District 1 board and chaired it. Originally, Service District 1 was created for sewer and water. Roads were thrown on as an afterthought when it went on the ballot. All it is now is roads, but it helped provide the infrastructure for Service District 1 to grow into what it is. So the experience there, the business experience that I have. Now, a lot of people don't realize it's not the mayor that leads the Borough Assembly. It's the manager that leads the Borough Assembly. The Assembly hires the manager. The mayor cannot even write a letter without approval of the Assembly. So the planning in that you want to talk about comes from the Assembly and is then carried out. So that's a little misunderstanding, I think, that's out there. The Assembly is that, and Mr. Griffin should know that because he's on the Assembly. Thank you.
And starting with Scott Arndt for this next question. One of the powers as mayor is the ability to veto ordinances and resolutions passed by the Borough Assembly. How do you think vetoes should or should not be used, and how would you use the power to override Assembly decisions?
I use the power sparingly, but I do use it well. Now, some people think that you do not veto something that passes on a 7 yes and 0 no's at the Assembly level. But I did it because it was on principle. There was mistakes made, too many mistakes made, that opened up the borough to liability. The Assembly last week did not override. So another one that I chose to do was when the borough was looking at doing a Band-Aid approach to repairing the pool instead of doing an overhaul that is desperately needed on that facility. So, and that wasn't overridden, and we are now looking into the full depth of the problems and have decided that it is quite extensive. Hope that answers your question.
And Jared Griffin. One of the powers as mayor is the ability to veto ordinances and resolutions passed by the Borough Assembly. How do you think vetoes should or should not be used, and how would you use the power to override Assembly decisions?
Well, like Scott said, the veto is a very important power that the mayor has and that should be used rarely. It's something that someone should take very seriously when they're thinking about doing that and overriding the wishes of the Assembly. I think I would consider veto for a couple of things. One, if there is some kind of conflict of interest that I perceive that was not addressed, that is important to me, is declaring those conflicts of interest, and I think that's something worth looking at too. I think it's use veto to ensure that the manager and the staff are following policies as they go through whatever ordinance resolution that comes through. And I think also it's a tool to prevent the Assembly from succumbing to tunnel vision. And being on the Assembly, we can do that. We can get an idea in our head, and then we just run with it. And there's some tunnel vision involved, and I think the mayor has to have that that skill of perception to see when the Assembly is leading themselves down, not necessarily the wrong way, but maybe in an incomplete way. And the veto, I think, is a way of helping to make the Assembly decisions or decision making more complete. So I see it as supporting the assembly and their goals, rather than chastising the assembly for getting something wrong.
Thank you very much. And next question is going to be back to you. As mayor, one of your responsibilities is to represent the whole of the Kodiak Island Borough, not just the road system communities. How would you connect with and represent the surrounding villages and ensure their needs are a priority for the borough?
I got to be a teaching. My microphone, thank you. Transportation issues and housing issues, and those little brief kind of listening sessions that I had were very important. And so I would use some of the, or I'd use much of the mayor's travel budget to actually travel to villages instead of Washington D.C. to connect with the people that are here on the island. I would also like to organize a mayor's council, including all the village leaders and the city and the mayor to meet when we can. I would make a more intentional, concerted effort that has been made to appoint emerging leaders from the villages onto boards and commissions. I think there's a lot of repairing of relationships that need to happen, especially on the cultural side of the villages, and really, it's leading by listening. It's the listening that will direct the policy and that will direct the solutions. As was said earlier, the more voices at the table together. But for me, it's not just about voices at the table. It's about increasing the number of decision makers at the table. And the village, yes, we should listen to village advice and feedback, but they also need to be at decision-making tables on boards and commissions and work groups and things like that. So I would make a more concerted effort to integrate the leadership there.
Thank you very much, Jared. Now to turn the question back over to Scott Arndt. As mayor, one of your responsibilities is to represent the whole of the Kodiak Island Borough, not just the road system communities. How would you connect with and represent the surrounding villages and ensure their needs are a priority to the borough?
First off, I grew up with a lot of the different people in the different villages because they came to town for school. The connections we have there, one of the things I try to do is participate in the rural forum when they come to town twice a year here, and listen to what they're saying, what they might have to say. One of the things that gets misconstrued is the borough only has certain powers. The primary power is education, and we support the schools. That's the main service that's provided to the outlying communities. They have their own city councils and that. They have projects they bring to us that go on our capital improvements list that we try and incorporate in, and we try and help them any way we can, especially through Alaska Municipal League. Does and tries to work with different communities on different grant opportunities. Can represent the villages. So when it comes to, we put their projects on because the borough does not have sewer and water powers. The borough does not have road powers. The borough does not have police powers. So cities typically have that, and we try and help them where we can if they have something. What we provide is education, and we, through community development, which is planning and zoning, we try and help them there. We are in charge of assessing, which we also collect any property tax that the other cities wish to be collected, and we remit that to them. Those are the duties of the borough. So if there's something we can do to help them, we're more than willing to listen.
And moving on. Mr. Arndt, you'll be starting this next question. What factors do you think are worsening the local housing crisis, and what actions should the borough take to address the lack of affordable homes?
Okay, first off, the lack of affordable homes and the housing crisis has existed since I got here in 1964. It's no worse than during the 70s and early 80s. Now, we have some different demographics. We have a loss in population, but yet we have a reduced housing availability. Part of that is our community is aging, and we're in our homes. Our homes are relatively paid for, and we're empty nesters, and we haven't downsized. And so we're not helping, and there's many of us in that boat in Kodiak here. Okay, where's the thing? Some people feel the Airbnb, and that's a different animal that is there. That's created some. There is also what I'll call some snowbirds that have lived here and now don't live here, but 4 to 6 months a year and are gone, and their houses are vacant. So we've got a different demographic taking place. But housing is expensive and is not going to get any cheaper here. Thank you.
And Mr. Griffin, what factors do you think are worsening the local housing crisis, and what actions should the borough take to address the lack of affordable homes?
So I worked with the Kodiak Economic Development Corporation. That's it. There's so many C words. When they were working on their housing plan and housing survey, and I went to several of those workshops, and pinning down the factor that is worsening a local housing crisis is really difficult. I agree that there are some demographic things going on, especially as there are smaller families. So it looks like population is going down, but they're not. But our younger families aren't having as many kids as they used to. There's issues with stock. There might be some issue with corporate speculators and rental properties, perhaps. But we need to think about. So the borough does not have housing authority, but we do have economic development power. And so we think about housing as economic growth and workforce stability, keeping families here. We got to start off with the Lands Committee, which is under our purview, and I think their recent meeting was just canceled due to lack of quorum. I believe in bidder preferences when land does come available for younger families, similar to a homestead kind of policy that was brought up earlier. Long-term leases. Long-term leaseholds for developments, engaging in our partners a little bit more intentionally, KEDC with the chamber, with major employers, with builders. We don't engage with them enough at the borough level to make these kinds of plans and to match the demands of what's actually out there. And of course, mixed-use zoning, which was brought up earlier. I was talking to someone yesterday about the cottage housing, and this is something I talked with the community development director about. So small homes with a common living space, so it brings the cost down. So there are things that we can do on our side, but the problem is quite complex.
Thank you very much, and we'll remain with you, Mr. Griffin, for this next question. What's your vision for Kodiak Island Borough's future, and how do we get there?
I guess we'll go 10 years out, ish. The Kodiak, a lot of you know I'm a competitor. I like to win. So my vision for Kodiak is in 10 years, the fact that Kodiak will be the #1 place in Alaska to start up a small business and succeed. 10, 15 years out, the fact that Kodiak will be #1 to raise a small family or a young family in Alaska. The fact that 10, 15 years from now, Kodiak will be known as the gateway to the Arctic. The Coast Guard announced that they're recommending opening up 4 shipping lanes from the Bering to Seattle. Why hasn't Kodiak been a part of that conversation? I would like to get us there. The fact that we are, in 10 years, #1 in the state for community pride, which was brought up. We would be seen as the #1 place for culture. The #1 place, this may not ring well with a lot of people, but maybe the #1 place for outdoor tourism. That's my vision. And it will take work, and it will take planning, and it will take consensus and repairing relationships. But we can get there, and we can be that place that is this, still we're #1, but still kind of a secret place, an open secret, so we retain our charm and our pride in this place.
Thank you very much. Mr. Arndt, what's your vision for Kodiak Island Borough's future, and how do we get there?
I think one of the first things we have to do is fix some of the problems we have, and that's part of what's consuming our time. We have student enrollment continuing to decline. Projections based on enrollment right now, we won't know till after the October count what the actual enrollment is, but it looks like it's on track for a decline again this school year. So Northstar School was closed with basically the understanding that it was going to save somewhere between $2.5 to $3.5 million in operating costs on the school district. I'm curious whether that is going to materialize on there. We have problems at the hospital. Jared and I were at a committee meeting yesterday where we got, you got $12 to $14 million worth of work, and we only got about $5 million. And that's more immediate work. There's other work and projects too. So it's an enterprise fund, but originally the hospital was built with tax dollars. And every savings account that the borough had back then was used to build that hospital. I don't want to see us go broke trying to support that. We got problems with the boat harbor. We got problems with roads. We got problems with sewer infrastructure. We got to work on getting that infrastructure fixed in order to facilitate any growth in the future. So I'm looking at the stuff that needs to be done now. Yes, Kodiak has survived. We've had our ups and downs, and I am confident we will get out of this too. But it's going to take some effort, and I'm concentrating on that stuff. Thank you.
And again, starting with Scott Arndt, the future of the former Northstar Elementary building is still yet to be determined. How do you think this facility should be used, and what kind of services or businesses should be prioritized?
Interesting question. I've already stated on the record what my opinion is on that, and I'll stand by it, and I'll repeat it tonight here. First off, the closing of Northstar School did not happen overnight. It took 10 to 15 years to decide to close that school, because that's how long the student population enrollment has been declining. Now, it is not going to open in a year or two, and there's a great many on the assembly that feel we need to hang on to that. I am not one of those. It needs a $2 million fix on the roof, sooner rather than later. The operational costs, well, I'll give you an example. We got an electric bill for August that's $2,400 and nobody was in it. So there's issues there. The cost of, the borough does not do a good job owning buildings and leasing it out. It's going to be the taxpayers that are going to have to support anything that goes in there. I'm in favor of disposing of that facility. Is that really what I wanted? No. Northstar, I testified, was the school that should have remained open, not closed. So with that, we don't need it. And there's no reason to hang on to it. So I think we need to sell it. And the YMCA would be, YMCA Alaska would be a great owner of that facility. Thank you.
And Jared Griffin. The future of the former Northstar Elementary building is still yet to be determined. How do you think this facility should be used, and what kind of services or businesses should be prioritized?
This is an interesting question because I actually I would hope, 6 months ago that this question wouldn't even be up there. Scott alluded to it, we've known about this, we've known that this is coming for quite a long time, and it was official earlier this year. And it was only at a joint work session where the Assembly compelled the mayor to start a committee to looking at this transition and this planning, and they only met one time, and that was to decide if they needed a city representative on the board. So now we're in this position where we're juggling the kinds of services or even businesses that can go in there, and it shouldn't really have had to be that way. It should remain a community building. The community built it. If we dispose of it, we will not get our return. And even then, whatever we use, we will have to save in case we need to buy the building back if the school district population goes back up. So it's better used and to let the borough staff kind of decide and work with organizations in town, primarily nonprofit organizations, preschools, daycares, even the YMCA, if they want to lease space, and with the city too. It's a great spot, great location, great building, and I think this could be a pillar of how well the borough can work with organizations and to work with people who need space, right? There's a lack of commercial space and nonprofit space in this community, and something has dropped into our lap, and it's the building that we already own. So free school, right, is what I heard. So disposing it should still be on the table because if things don't work out, and we don't want to just let it sit there and get vandalized. But yeah, let's keep it in the community.
Remaining with you, Mr. Griffin. Both state and federal capital improvement project funds have become more competitive in the last year, but the borough still needs money to maintain infrastructure both on the road system and in the villages. How can the borough improve its efforts to find funds for these types of projects, and what projects would you prioritize if elected as borough mayor?
All right, big loaded question there. Yes. Oh my gosh. I had it on and then I just turned it off. I don't speak that loudly, right? The reality is, yes, there are a lot of infrastructure needs right now, and a dollar that we don't spend on them today is going to be, $4 or $5, in a few years. The pool, the hospital, the auditorium, the leachate system, and on and on. We can improve our efforts by by developing a long-term capital project plan. The CIP that comes to us every year, it almost always just seems like a surprise, and it's never on the agenda to build up those conversations that would turn into a plan. And the plan would include a strategy for incurring funds for these types of projects. I think the biggest thing that we will have to do is PILT was brought up, I think, in the previous work or in the previous discussion. PILT is, I think, is a huge thing that we should double, triple our advocacy efforts with our legislators to show how we use that and how we're getting the shrift. We're getting short shrifted on it, and that would be a big place I would go to get funding for some of these projects. They do cost money. I am not in favor of raising the mill rate to pay for the projects, but there are other ways that we can do it. But I see PILT and voluntary PILT, and and as part of that capital improvement plan, we've got to make a plan and a timeline for having shovel-ready projects, so that when grant opportunities do come up, we can just hand them the grant, hand them the proposal, and kind of be done with it. Why? Because it was part of our plan. We have predicted this, and we have planned for it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Arndt, Both state and federal capital improvement project funds have become more competitive in the last year, but the borough still needs money to maintain infrastructure both on the road system and in the villages. How can the borough improve its efforts to find funds for these types of projects, and what projects would you prioritize if elected as borough mayor?
Well, first off, the state capital improvements projects have been non-existent for the last 5 years. Very little has come through from the state. And what the federal government has been doing, fortunately, we had a $7 million grant the city got for the USDA on the fire station. So that helped them, along with another major grant, capital improvement one that Louise Stutz and Gary Stevens were able to get for to match that $7 million. We will, for the borough, we have schools that we need to maintain, both in the outlying communities and in town. We're behind on it. Like I said, borough does not do well playing landlord. Even the enterprise funds that are buildings, the one on Near Island, it's a GSA contract. There's not enough money to do the maintenance on it. There's not enough money at the hospital. And there's not enough money for doing all the maintenance at the schools. So that's part of what our job is prioritizing what we're going to do on that. And we have a plan, and it's trying to do some both in town and in the rural communities. So our manager has been doing very well in working with that and presenting that to the assembly, and we'll continue to do that. Thank you.
Yeah. And sticking with you, Scott Arndt, if you're elected, what are your priorities for projects and changes to focus on?
Well, I think that one of the things is, ineffective as the CIP list has been for the last 5 years, we still need to use that mechanism. And what I'd like to see, like what we did in the early 80s, and at that time it was the right time and it worked out. I don't know that it will be this time, but we need to get some smaller sewer and water projects on there. For instance, you have a water line that goes out Sprucescape and you have a water line that goes down Woodland Drive. Those two lines need to be looped, so if there's a problem, you can supply it from either direction. It also, to do that, you tie the road in, so if there's a problem, it works out well. I think one of the things that the Lands Committee will be working on is the Clarney Hills, what we call subdivision potential, which is otherwise sometimes called the Canna Field there. That development is going to take infrastructure, and it's going to take sewer and water on there. We don't have that on the capital improvements list, and I think we need to put that on. So it's some of that stuff. We have the boat harbor is on the CIP list, the borough CIP list. I think it was number 1. I think it'll be number 1 this year again on there. And treatment plant facilities. So it's some of that infrastructure that we need to try and help. Thank you.
And Jared Griffin, if you're elected, what are your priorities for projects and changes to focus on?
Well, I completely agree with Scott about all the projects that are there and that are knocking at our door. Those are things that we should prioritize because they are, part of the structure. If we want to grow or build or at least maintain our community, then we got to make sure the bones are healthy. I would prioritize planning as mayor, whether it's leading the assembly in discussions about strategic planning, long-term capital project planning, working more closely with the community development plan that they are working on. That's where I sit, and that's where I prioritize my discussions with the assembly. And then I would also prioritize relationships. I believe in open communication. As mayor, I would prioritize holding Q&As when and where possible. I've gotten an open invite to the senior center, which I'm looking forward to. writing newspaper columns, coming on KVOK, you know, and being more, I would prioritize being more open and transparent and accessible to people. I would also prioritize integrating more community voices into the development of projects and what kind of projects that we need. A religion forum, perhaps would be great. You're not going to get any distractions from me from my personal business or my dealings with the other duties that I have. The priority has to be that government is accessible, that government is accountable, that government is something that you can trust. And it's going to be hard time. We're going to have a hard time completing some of these projects if we don't have that buy-in. So,
Thank you very much. And remaining with you, Mr. Griffin, despite the recent funding boost from the state, the local school district is likely facing further significant budget cuts. How would you handle the annual funding requests from KIBSD school district? How much funding would you approve?
well, as been said, the borough's number one priority is to fund education. It's our number one responsibility. That's pretty much what we decide on first and then shape the rest of our budget around. I have always supported granting the school district's request. They need stability, but more than stability, guys, it's an investment. It's just not making sure that our kids are educated and our families have a place to go, but this is like a literal investment in Kodiak's future. These are the people who are going to be leading Kodiak in 10, 20, 30 years down the line. So, so I think even proposals of lowering the mill rate is this kind of underhanded way of cutting education funding. So it has to be prioritized for us. How much funding would I approve? It depends on the ask, and it depends on how much money. We're about to run into a ceiling where our allowable maximum is going up, but because of our tax code, our mill rate is going to be going down. So it may not happen this year, but definitely in 2 years, we're going to have serious discussions with ourselves, the school board, and with the state on how to give the school district what they need. I don't buy into the argument that the school district needs to be accountable through test scores. Test scores is not about funding policy. Test scores are about to make sure how effective are teachers and how well are the students learning. It's a tool to measure that, not to determine all these other kind of big financial things. That's not how government works. That's how businesses work. That is not how government works. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Arndt, despite the recent funding boost from the state, the local school district is likely facing further significant budget cuts. How would you handle the annual funding request from the school district, and how much funding would you approve?
Well, as the mayor doesn't get to vote on the school budget appropriation on there. Only in the case of a tie would the mayor vote on it. So, first off, education's supposed to be the number one responsibility of the state also. And the state, under the Dunleavy administration, has fallen way behind on that. It wasn't until recently here that the legislature was finally able to override one of his vetoes on education. First time in 7 years. We got one more year with his administration, and I'm hoping there'll be a change that will let the legislature and the governor proceed with providing funding necessary. It isn't just Kodiak that's had a problem. It's all boroughs. Look at the Anchorage district. Look at the Kenai district. Look at the Fairbanks districts. We all have funding problems, Juneau, Ketchikan. So it's a matter of the state facing up to its responsibility on education. The Kodiak Island Borough has been carrying the difference for years. It's given in the last 4 years substantial increase in funding to schools. And we'll have to weigh that against the other revenue and other responsibilities of the borough. Thank you.
And starting with you, Scott Arndt, commercial fishing makes up the largest part of Kodiak's economy. As climate change and policies create issues in the industry, how would you suggest improving Kodiak's economic resiliency?
Economic resiliency. Well, I tell you, government isn't going to do a damn thing about it. It's going to be the private sector. It's going to be the people in the community, like Sam Much, like the Roars, and you can go right on down the list, putting their money where their mouth is in this community. It's not government. I've watched government put money into so-called economic development for the last 40 years here, and the only gain I ever saw out of it was a branding thing that came when the Chamber of Commerce was doing it. And then there's some other communities that helped steal that too, copy the idea. So, no, I don't feel government, we can encourage, but government doesn't create the economic resilience. One of the things that I feel should happen in this community is we need to change the way we take care of our garbage. We need to basically produce energy from it, which means incinerate it and generate energy, and then look at using that energy for sustainability on growing food, greenhouses and stuff like that, and also generating electricity. So that's one of the things. The fishing industry is in turmoil right now, and it's trying to sort itself out. I would say it's the worst I've seen it in the 61 years I've lived here. And it's drastically affecting families in this community. And we're seeing the waterfront, the canneries, there's far less. We now have no other canneries around the island. The only canneries are in town here, and I'll say seafood processors. So it's going to be the private sector putting money where their mouth is. And that cold storage facility that Sam Much and his partners are providing, I've heard about that for 50 years. Thank you.
And Jared Griffin. Commercial fishing makes up the largest part of Kodiak's economy. As climate change and policies create issues in the industry, how would you suggest improving Kodiak's economic resiliency?
I believe in place-based development that works with the government. I guess I'm a capitalist, but I'm more of an Adam Smith capitalist that saw the private sector and government, they have to work together for any kind of capitalist economy to work. Fishing is the backbone. We need to protect that. However we can, and look at opportunities for supporting the city and their harbor infrastructure. We can make resolutions for conservation-minded policies. We can organize things like a fisheries work group that we have. That's government bringing fishery and maritime sectors together to talk about the economics of what they're experiencing right now. We can participate in SWAMC, which is focused on fisheries and transportation issues across our region. Too much wealth leaves our borough to go to Anchorage, to go to the Valley, to go to Seattle. If we start to think about our economy as what's going on here, Scott mentioned a couple of examples. There are things that the government can do. There are things with zoning that we can do, which is a big part of it. When we have properties like Northstar, there are things that we can do to help with that. The borough can insert itself into these opening of the Arctic conversations going on for economic development. But again, we've been standing back too much, and we should really, get into that. There's explore logistics, storage, research, a lot of opportunities there. We can look at land use and land policies to encourage more commercial space development. That's a tool in our toolbox. So there are a lot of things that the government can do.
Thank you. And remaining with you, Mr. Griffin, as the Coast Guard continues to increase its presence in and around Kodiak, how should the borough work with officials to ensure smooth growth and maintain a partnership? What would a healthy partnership look like?
Well, a healthy partnership would be the fact in 10 years, we are ranked #1 for the most military-friendly community in the United States. I think that's a goal that we can easily achieve. But it takes, again, accessibility and conversation and collaboration with Coast Guard leadership, which does rotate out quite often. So that's a heavy effort to keep up those relationships there. That's what's big to me is leaders talking to leaders, so that because their plans affect our plans, and I think we need to make that more apparent, perhaps, to the Coast Guard, and then plan things together, which would be ideal because it would save us a lot of money when we have projects. And then again, I think if we could get the Coast Guard to work with us on PILT advocacy, that would be momentous if we could get the Coast Guard on our side with PILT conversations too. But those only work with the relationships and the communication that we build with them. We cannot see each other as silos anymore. Our economy cannot handle silos anymore. So, so that's where I would go.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Arndt, same question. As the Coast Guard continues to increase its presence in and around Kodiak, how should the borough work with officials to ensure smooth growth and to maintain a partnership? What would a healthy partnership look like?
I think we already have a healthy partnership with the Coast Guard. We invite them and we talk about different things at different times with the commander out there. If they have any questions, it's an open form of communication both ways. I would like to, one of the things that my opponent criticized me for was traveling to Washington, D.C. It's also to meet with the Coast Guard, the manager, and I have gone there, and it is effective in meeting with the people. PILT, yes, I've gone same trip. We try and get multiple things on trips. I'm on the Alaska Municipal League Board of Directors, and as a NACO, National Association of Counties, Alaska Municipal League pays half of my costs going there. So it's a win-win for us when we go there, and that's usually when the manager accompanies, so we get the most bang for our buck. But it's talking with our legislators. It's talking with the Coast Guard, which is a big part of our economy here. It's advocating for the PILT through the National Association of Counties. Been doing that. The other community that is there at the table every year for the 3 years I've gone is Ketchikan. Only they take 3 people from their borough assembly, their manager, their assistant manager, and the mayor. And so I've learned a lot from them on what they do. We get, right now, we budgeted 1.6 and we got about 1.9 million. We thought it was going to be 1.9, but we try to keep it conservative in case there's a problem. Ketchikan gets 4.5 million on PILT, and they're looking for more because they're surrounded on there. So I think that we've got a good working relationship with the Coast Guard.
And that's it for our questions for tonight. We're now moving on to closing statements. As a reminder, you will each have 1 minute to share your final thoughts for listeners and the audience. Continuing on the rotation, starting with Scott Arndt.
Why don't we do that the other way?
Is that okay with you, Mr. Griffin?
Totally.
Okay. You're up first for closing thoughts. You have 1 minute.
Kodiak has given me and my family so much, and running for mayor is my way of giving back. Over the years, I've served on the Borough Assembly, chaired boards on healthcare, workforce, fisheries, led a nonprofit, taught at Kodiak College, and coached our youth to multiple state championships and national bids. And those experiences have one thing in common. I've proven I can listen, I've proven I can build teams, and I've proven I can deliver results. I believe leadership matters. Kodiak deserves a leader who is steady, who is transparent, and is committed to planning for the long haul. Someone who will protect education, who will tackle housing, who will help maintain our infrastructure, and do what we can to strengthen our economy. That's the kind of leadership that I bring. And when I go to travel to DC and I learn things, I promise to tell you all the ideas and solutions that I've learned. I love this community, and I am ready to put my experience and skills and vision to work for all of Kodiak.
Mr. Arndt.
Thank you. Community has been my home. It's what I know. Like I said, 61 years here. And we've come a long ways, and we've got, it's trying to survive. Right now we're going through a reduced population, and I feel I have the experience and the leadership to get us through it. One of our biggest problems here and the cost of living is the cost of property taxes, because assessments have gone up. So we've got to work on lowering that too, and sustaining education at the same time. Thank you.
That's it for the forums for the Kodiak Island Borough Mayor. Thanks again to all our candidates for joining us this evening.
Thanks to the audience for being here. For listeners on KMXT 100.1 FM, online through the KMXT website or the Kodiak Island Borough YouTube page, as well as the event sponsors, the Kodiak Chamber of Commerce, KVOK, and us here at KMXT.
Early voting is open now in person by stopping in the Borough Assembly Chambers Monday through Friday. I'm not quite sure what the time is, but you can check it out. 10 to 4. 10 to 4. Election is on October 7th with polling locations.
That is it for the 2025 Municipal Candidate Forum. Again, I'm your moderator, Brian Benoit.
And I'm Neil Basewas. Have a good night, everyone, and thank you for tuning in.